Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me, Stories of Hope, Gratitude, and Resilience. I feel so fortunate today to have as our guest Dr. David Richo. He is a renowned psychotherapist, teacher, and author who has dedicated his life to exploring the intersection of psychology and spirituality. He received his BA in psychology from St. John's Seminary in Brighton, Massachusetts. In 1962, his MA in counseling psychology from Fairfield University in 1969, and his PhD in clinical psychology from Sierra University in 1984. Since 1976, he's been a licensed marriage, family, and child counselor in California. And in addition to practicing psychotherapy, teaches courses at Santa Barbara City College and the University of California, Berkeley, and has taught at the Salem Institute in Big Sur, Pacifica Graduate Institute, and Santa Barbara Graduate Institute. He is a clinical supervisor for the Community Counseling Center in Santa Barbara. He has authored numerous books, including How to Be an Adult in Relationships, Triggers, The 5 Things We Cannot Change, and his most recent release, By Your Side. And he leads popular workshops on emotional well-being. He splits his time between Santa Barbara and San Francisco, California, where he continues to inspire and guide others on their journey to self-discovery and healing. Welcome, David. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, Kelly, and I appreciate your inviting me.
So if we could just start, for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your work, could you just kind of give us an overview of, your journey and what inspired you to become a psychotherapist and then an author?
I'm sorry to say what inspired me to become a psychotherapist is I was so messed up. I thought if I learned all about psychology, I'd get better. So I soon found out that it doesn't work that way. So I, went into therapy to get help, and I feel like I don't see being a therapist. Of course, now I'm close to retirement, so I don't take any new clients, only ones that I've already seen. But I could say that over these 53 years of being a therapist, I never felt it was a job. I always felt it was more of a calling. And the calling goes all the way back to just this feeling that I know what I know, and I'm appreciative of what I know and what I can share, and that the universe has made some summons to me to share that with others, and that's what I've been doing through my writing and teaching and therapy.
So truly a calling to this profession and to share your wisdom. So your work, I believe I read with Carl Jung, and kind of a mythic perspective. So tell me about how you've kind of combined, that kind of theory with kind of Western practices of psychology and therapy.
It just seems as if neither Western nor Eastern were enough.
Yes.
It felt like it would be good to combine them in whatever way I could. And also I noticed that there are many similarities between the two, and that further kind of interconfirms them. They each confirm the other. So I've learned a lot and am a Buddhist practitioner. But I also have my Catholic background, and I still appreciate how so many of the Catholic teachings refer to the archetypes that all of us humans participate in. And so I appreciate both the religious and the Buddhist perspectives, and I try to pull them together in what I write.
And I
without
feel like,
trying to push either one on people.
no, but I feel like, because I was raised Roman Catholic as well and went to Catholic school, and but found myself later in life wanting to explore other belief systems, just out of curiosity and to see the commonalities in each message. And I think in just reading about your work, that I feel like that it's kind of like an open welcome, so that it's not restricted to just one particular message where people feel like they have to fit into that silo. Everybody is welcome. And I that's what I love about your message.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, it's
so
kind of
you're,
creating hospitality
yeah.
for all the resources.
Yeah, and it's so refreshing. You know, today's world is very noisy, and you know, people we've gotten into a bad habit of wanting to segregate ourselves away from each other so that we can't have productive dialogue. And I hope that we get back to a place where we can have conversations and not necessarily agree 100%, but not be disagreeable.
Good
And
way to put it.
yeah. So let's jump in. I just want to ask about your latest book, because I'm really interested in hearing about the concept of soulful allies. I just love that. So could you explain what a soulful ally is and why they're essential in our lives?
Well, first of all, it was a big thrill for me to feel moved to say something about the archetype of the assisting force. So, in an archetype is a common theme that in stories the world over and all throughout the ages that also reflects inner energies that all of us are endowed with. So, for instance, the central and main archetypal story, thanks to Joseph Campbell explaining it to us, is, of course, the heroic journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character leaves where he or she is and then moves through various struggles in search of something that seems important, and ultimately finds out that what you're seeking that you thought was outside of yourself is actually inside. And that is wonderful news because it shows that you have wholeness. And then you bring that message back to where you came from. So
Yeah.
let's use a simple example. Dorothy in Oz thinks that her purpose is to get back to Kansas.
Yes.
But actually, the purpose of the journey was not to get back to Kansas. It was to recognize what the good witch said to her. You've had the power all along. In other words,
Mm.
you have power in you that you didn't know you had. And you no longer have to be afraid about the welfare of the little dog or yourself because you have vast inner resources. So that's the heroine of the story and what she finds out as the purpose of her journey. And as part of the journey for Dorothy and for all characters and all stories, we notice that they don't operate alone. They have friendly, assisting comrades who help them fulfill their purpose, who help
Yeah.
them find their destiny. These characters are both tangible, we can see, touch, feel them, and intangible, spiritual. So in the Wizard of Oz, her tangible assisting forces are the three friends that she meets.
Yes.
And her spiritual assisting force is the Glinda, the good witch.
Right.
Then, in addition, the hero or heroine has afflicting forces. These are the ones who are trying to stop you from fulfilling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the evil witch and her army in the story.
Yep.
But ultimately, the afflicting forces show you your own strength. So when she finally threw water on the witch and, and thereby destroyed the evil power.
Yes.
She found out she had more strength than she thought she had. So the allies, to get back to your question, the allies are the assisting forces in our life, the people living and dead, and the spiritual figures that we might believe in, such as guardian angels, patron saints, bodhisattvas, Buddhas,
Yes.
great heroes like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Mother Teresa. They're all helping us in some way. And they are the friends of our soul. Soul meaning the wonderful wholeness that we're really about, even though our daily life doesn't really manifest it. So we look like messed up, wounded people, and we are, but somewhere inside of us is a wholeness, a completion, a completeness that has not been messed up by whatever our parents did to us or whatever horrible traumas we've been through. And the allies are the friends of that.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, an important feature of the allies is that they don't necessarily have to make something happen. So in the story of Robin Hood, his assisting forces are male and female. He has Maid Marian. She's going to help him get out of prison.
Yeah.
And he has his merry men of Sherwood. They're going to help him get out of prison and fulfill his goal, which is fidelity to the king. All of them are offering tangible ways of being of help. But there are also ways that we're getting help that you can't put your finger on, you can't name, and you certainly don't know where it came from. Sudden intuitions, realizations, visions, dreams that reveal something important about yourself to yourself. So it's always a combination of what you can name and what you can't quite name. And I'm a believer that we have many more assisting forces than we could ever imagine. Sometimes these, as I said, sometimes these assisting forces help you in tangible ways, like getting Robin Hood out of prison and helping Dorothy go back home. But at other times, the only thing that they offer is presence. And I'll give a very simple example. We're all familiar with the 23rd Psalm, especially the words, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me."
Yes.
So in that statement, King David is saying, it's a dark time for me. I can't really see my way clearly. And there's a presence beside me that is simply accompanying me. And that's how I'm getting through this. So sometimes the assisting force only offers presence, hold your hand as you go through something, give you a
Right.
hug when you need it, rather than fix it for you, make it all come out right, change this whole thing um, so that you'll get what you really want. The assisting force is sometimes not like that. It's sometimes just the sense of accompaniment, which is one of the most beautiful things people can do for each other.
The
Does this make
present.
sense to you?
Pardon me?
Does this make sense to you?
It absolutely does. And it's quite beautiful to think about. Now, you mentioned when we were talking a little bit about the Wizard of Oz and, kind of the good witch and the bad witch. Do you feel that, that it's part of the journey that we encounter people who push back and kind of force us to confront and to make friends with the struggle and then rise above it. So that is definitely that's part of it. I mean, they are
Oh, yes.
in a way, they're just as important as the allies who are walking with Dorothy, the lion and the Tin Man. Because
Mhm.
without that struggle, Dorothy would not come to the conclusion that she did at the end, right? That it was in
Yes.
her all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is just beautiful. And I'm thinking about, the soulful allies in my life, both seen and unseen. And I am a big believer that I am surrounded by supportive, beautiful forces
Mhm.
every single day that help me with this work. And then having a community of people. Um, Certainly, I work a fair bit with the bereaved, and community is it's important, and it's a struggle at times, especially early in your grief when you feel like you need to retreat and kind of protect yourself. But can you talk about um, the role of allies in terms of grief and loss?
Yes. And first of all, it's wonderful to realize, and I don't know if this has happened to you, but it has happened to me, that in a time of grief, you will draw the allies to you
Yes.
without even having to ask.
Yeah.
People show up from out of nowhere, and realizations come to you from out of nowhere that console you, and people become available to sit with you in your grief or even to comfort you. Um, there's something about the utter honesty of grief.
Yeah.
Something important has been lost, and I'm sitting here in my sadness and I'm holding it. And of course, the archetype of holding the grief is the Pietà, the statue, by Michelangelo, is an
Yes.
example of it, where you have the Virgin Mary at the foot of the cross holding the dead body of her son. And
It's a
that's
powerful
all
piece.
she's doing. She's just holding it for all eternity.
Hmm.
I hope the statue lasts that long.
Yes, me
um,
too.
that's the picture of grief, and that you don't throw away what you've lost, that you hold it in a soulful place. And in that sense, it's always somehow present, what you've lost. And you're beaming out a certain kind of energy to the world around you, and you
Hmm.
notice that it draws in some helpers. So this is an important part of the archetype of the assisting force.
So, and I feel, you talked about in terms of grief. I have always described the first year after my son passed away. The first year after, I describe it as the most awake year of my life. Um, because I felt that support all around me, that unseen support for sure, without a doubt. And it's funny, I had that picture of Mary. I had it in my planner. I used to look at it several times a week and kind of pray to find the strength, because it is it when you look at it, it encompassed every emotion that I was feeling. When you look at that picture, it truly does. Um, so we have those soulful allies, and I'm thinking about actual individuals now who are in our lives. So what role can they play? Like, some people have an active role or a passive role, but what role can they play in the healing process? Because it's a struggle. Um, a lot of people don't know how to approach grief, right? And so
Yeah, and some
how
people are afraid of it, and some people that you thought you could trust will turn away from you in your
Yes,
grief because they're afraid of the feelings that you're showing.
yeah,
And of course, you're showing them very, as I say, honestly, you're really crying. Um, and some people just can't handle that. So we don't judge them for that. We just
no,
recognize, okay, that's his or her or their limit.
yeah,
And we also notice that there are other people who are strong enough to handle our feelings, and they will hold our hand as we go through it. The best contribution the ally can make is right there in the song, "For Thou Art With Me." Just the feeling that there really is somebody willing to sit here and be with me as I go through this.
hmm,
That's the true helper, not the one who made it all go away, because such a one does not even exist or can
no,
exist.
no,
We have to go through our sufferings, um, but we don't have to go through them on our own.
we
That's the
don't.
whole point of there being allies,
Hmm.
assisting forces.
And I'm trying to think of the word when we talk about suffering, and in terms of Buddhism, they talk about an unchangeable peace within, right? Is it the bodhicitta heart or something? I believe um, that was a message a friend gave me early on, and it was something that I held on to. That there was an unchangeable peace within me, and then
That's the higher
translate
self.
that,
Mhm.
yeah, and that no matter what happened, that was available to me, that was there. And even with a profound loss where you feel absolutely shattered, um, that that there's a place that you will return eventually when you do the work.
It's a
um,
beautiful way to put it, and I totally agree. I mean, you're finding the larger identity of yourself. It's something about you that can't be put on a driver's license or birth certificate. Something that has more than what meets the eye in who you are. And some people would call that God or saints or Buddhas and so forth. But um, we can also say that it's the God within, the Buddha within, the
yes.
communion of saints that we're participating in. That gives you a feeling that you're not alone, and that what you're turning to for support, "Thou art with me," that thou is also ultimately you,
Mm, yeah,
the
that's
part of
beautiful.
you that's bigger than the story. And it can't really be named or described very well. Um, but the best way to locate it is to look at what you turn to and honor most and admire most and even adore, that's how you see that bigger piece of yourself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Um, and I think when people allow themselves to sit with that grief and to really discover who they are and return to that place, um, your perspective on life completely changes. Um, I approach my grief with by using gratitude, not for what had been lost, but for what still remained. And so, and I actually, we started this practice as a family because I was really worried about my 12-year-old son being able to bounce back from this family tragedy. And so every day we would look for one little thing. And we said one little thing because some days we could only find one little thing, on those tough days. But we gave ourselves permission for those tough days. So if that day my one little thing was walking to the mailbox, and I was brave enough to do it after a month or so of crying in my room, then that was something to be grateful for, so that we kind of redefined on a deeper level that there was still goodness all around us, even though we were in pain. And that somehow alleviated part of the suffering of the journey.
Mm, how
Um,
beautiful. You see, you were sticking with grief, what Freud called the grief work. You
okay.
were saying, we're going through a process, we need to stay with it, and it's going to involve being in touch with all the family members that have been affected by what happened.
Hmm.
And your son, your 12-year-old, was an example of that person. Um, and you stayed with it. And that's how you get through it.
Yeah,
And
I
you
mean,
go away with drugs or alcohol or
no,
denial.
no. And I mean, it's, I know, people, there's so much suffering in the world, and there's a lot of inclination, I guess, for some people to numb it. But it's always there when you,
Mhm.
it always waits for you. It always, when you finish numbing that pain and you come back to that, it's still sitting there waiting for you to look at it.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's the healthy side of you. See, when you say it's always waiting, it wants to come back and make its claim upon you, that you stay with it, that you work through things. The kind of grief you have, which I can't even imagine, is the kind of grief you have for a lifetime. It never
mm,
goes away. It's not
yeah,
like the grief of, I lost money once. That grief ends in a
yeah,
matter of months or a year. But the grief of loss of a child is, a lifetime of, mourning. And you can still have a life of happiness,
hmm,
but you're carrying around something that was never meant to happen.
correct. Yeah,
So, um,
it
so
has.
that's the mystery in it.
There's so many different layers to it, and I rediscover another layer as each year passes, to be honest.
Oh yes,
And
it's multi-layered.
it truly is. And I find, and I've talked to many other bereaved parents, we've had conversations about this, that at different life stages. So when my son's friends were starting to get married, that was a layer of grief that I for whatever reason, I didn't anticipate, but it hit me, and it was very
Mm,
difficult. Because and then when they started to have kids, because we've stayed close with all of his friends, and they're beautiful, beautiful humans. so incredibly happy for them and their happy lives. But it struck me, and I struggled because I was like, I'm so happy for them, but I can't deal with this. I can't look at it right now. It's just too much. So it's those layers. And I think what's important for people who have that kind of grief, that kind of walks side by side with you for a lifetime, is at some point I had to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make peace with this. And when it bubbles up, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna think about why it's bubbling up. I'm gonna write about it because I write a lot. Um, and I'm not gonna be afraid of it. I'm not gonna be afraid of it.
Well, good for you. That's really the way it works. When you said, I can't look at it right now, that's an important part of the grief process. You have to honor your timing.
Yeah.
I'll know when the time is right. That's when I'll be able to look at this part. But right now, I can't. There's nothing wrong with you for being like that. That's the healthy part of you that
Yeah.
is letting it in piecemeal, which is the only way it can be let in.
And I think, I went for therapy and our whole family did, and it was the best thing we ever did. I was so thankful that we made that choice because we just didn't have the toolbox, right? We didn't know how to navigate it. Um, and that was one of the lessons that I really took from that whole experience was it's okay to set some emotional boundaries for yourself until you're ready. That's perfectly fine. And that was very freeing. And I remember my son came out of his first one-on-one session, and he said, I don't really have to talk to you about this because I wanted him to have autonomy in his discussion. It was he was going through a completely different experience than me. Um, but it was learning that it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to give yourself time. It's okay to be kind to yourself because sometimes we beat ourselves up when we feel like we should be stronger than we are. Um, I want to jump for a second because this is a big topic, especially with bereaved parents. And you have written extensively about relationships. And bereaved parents, oftentimes that you will see that relationships suffer, in particular partnerships and marriages.
Mhm.
Can you speak to that a little bit? And what could we do that would help us in that regard?
Oh, first of all, it's true psychologically that a relationship between partners is is in danger, threatened when a child of theirs dies, because you go off each into your own grief,
Mhm.
and you start to drift apart. Um, and at the same time, you can no longer handle the grief of your partner because your partner continually reminds you of your own grief that you're trying to work through or get away from. So the only way to be sure that the relationship survives is to go through the grieving process together and let it be okay that each of you has breakdowns from time to time and that the other person is going to be with you in the dark valley and doesn't have to fix it for you. Um, that would help a lot with keeping the relationship alive. See, everything wants to die when someone dies at an unexpected time or in a tragic way. everything wants to shut down,
Yeah.
pull down the shades, hide. And in a relationship, if you're trying to hide from each other, that would make it well nigh impossible to stay together as a couple.
Hmm.
Anyway, that is something to keep in mind.
And I think in terms of like a male-female partnership, men and women grieve very differently. Um, and so there has to be an acceptance of that, right? It's difficult because um, sometimes you just don't feel like you're connecting with your partner if that person is struggling with something that's completely different than you. And
Mm,
that's where kind of therapy really plays a part. And it's important. I always felt like communication, obviously between partners is important, but I always felt when I was in therapy that this was someone who didn't really, who was interested in our healing, but recognize the differences and the autonomy of our own grief.
mm,
So we were able to have kind of that individual time where we could process very different emotions that we had that weren't matched. Um, and so, and I say that just to encourage anybody who's listening that it is a good idea to find someone to talk to if you're struggling. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
you
to
did
reach.
just the right thing, and it really helped, I presume.
Absolutely. So just moving on again on the topic of relationships, but going to another one of your books, could you discuss the 5 A's: attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing? So that's from your book, How to Be an Adult in Relationships. So can you speak a little bit to them and relationships and how that works?
Sure. First of all, the five A's, I use the phrase 5 A's because they all start with the letter A.
Mhm.
They refer to specific needs that we have all through life. So when we're born, we have many needs, but 5 specific ones stand out. The first one is you have a need for attention as an infant who has no words. You only
Mhm.
have various kinds of cries,
Right.
and you need to be with caretakers who 24/7 are available to hear those cries and to interpret them. So basically, you're crying for one or more of three things. One, I need to be fed. Two, I need to be held. Third, I need to be changed. And somehow you have to get it across to your parents that you have one of those needs, and they consistently and happily fulfill them.
Yeah.
So that's the need for attention. And you also have a need to be cherished and valued. That's what I call appreciation,
Mhm.
since appreciation is based on the Latin word for price. That you're a pearl of great price here in the house, that people value you. They don't think less of you because you're a girl rather when they wanted a boy, or a boy when they wanted a girl. You're just valued as yourself.
Mhm.
And soon you start to show personality characteristics that are uniquely yours, maybe not the ones your parents had hoped for. Maybe you have a mind of your own. And that's where you need acceptance of
Yeah.
yourself just as you are. That's the third A. And in all of this, they need to be holding you affectionately and showing their love physically, and that's the affection. And then at some point, you crawl across the floor and you no longer need them to carry you across.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are becoming more independent, and it'll happen again on the first day of school.
Yep.
It'll happen again when you leave high school to go to college. It'll happen again when you get married, if that's your next step, and so forth. So we're continually weaning ourselves away from our parents while still loving them. And a parent has to be ready to let that happen. Now, these same 5 A's are the ones that you carry with you all through your life. And so when you look for a partner, you want someone who can pay attention to you rather than think only of himself. In other words, not be a narcissist.
Yes.
You want somebody who values you and appreciates you for what you do, not take you for granted.
Mm-hmm.
You want someone who accepts you just as you are rather than try to make you over into what he or she or they want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody who shows affection fully appropriate to the nature of the relationship, so it can include sex.
Yep.
And finally, you need somebody who honors the fact that you're an individual, you have your own unique wishes and needs, and it's okay for you to pursue them. And he's not trying to control you or stop you from doing that. So it's the 5 A's in childhood, the 5 A's in adulthood. And in the first one, you're given the parents that you were given. And in the second one, you make the choice of a partner. But I'm suggesting that you make the choice on the basis of they can fulfill those 5 needs, and you can offer to fulfill them for your partner. So that's how it all comes together.
Okay. And so if you find yourself in a relationship as an adult and those 5 A's, there's some gaps there. What do you recommend to couples to kind of regain
Well, first of
their
all, in the first part of your story, the infancy,
Mm-hmm.
then and only then can you expect 24/7 need fulfillment.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 100%. But when you're an adult, you only really want about 25% from a partner. The other 75% you're supposed to be getting from yourself, your friends, your people at work, your assisting forces, whoever they are, living and dead, seen and unseen, your spirituality, nature,
Yes.
and whatever your personal calling is and how it's taken you into a community of people who have the same calling as you do, like, making a contribution to society, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So you're supposed to have all those resources to draw from, not try to get, for those 5 A's, not try to get them all fulfilled by one person all the time. That's the fast track to divorce.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's kind of, especially in your younger years, I think that you think that when you find your partner or your soulmate or whatever you're calling each other, sometimes that expectation is that that's going to be your source of fulfillment, and 100%. And that's so much pressure on a relationship that's it's just not realistic to think that way, right? That we fill our cup in from many different locations.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Um, Looking back at your career, what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of your work?
The most rewarding aspect is how I've been given the gifts, I think, of being able to teach in a way that really comes across clearly and write in a way that makes difficult concepts simpler to understand.
Yes, that's
Um,
very true.
I think it goes back to, I'm trying to figure out where it all came from. And part of my upbringing was to be with my grandmother a lot, who was, kind of taking care of me when my parents were at work.
Mhm.
And she was from Italy, and she uh, couldn't really speak English very well.
Okay.
And as I continued to um, learn English myself and understand the world around me, I would be continually explaining it to her. And I would
Oh,
have to put everything in the simplest terms so she
yes.
could understand. She didn't have the same education that you or I have had.
Mhm.
And I think that's where I began to have the skill of explaining things simply. That's the best I can figure
Mm.
out as to where it came from. But it certainly is a gift. All my work I consider a gift from the Holy Spirit, and I'm continually thankful for it. I don't really think of what I know as coming from me. Feels more like it comes through me. And I'm not letting myself off the hook because, of course, I also make a lot of mistakes and don't know a lot of things. But it's wonderful to feel the power of grace in your life. That is the name of one of my
It
books, Power of Grace.
The
That's how
power
much I
of grace.
cherished it. I wrote a whole book about it because I thought it was so important. And of course, the assisting forces and grace are in the same archetype. Grace is the special assistance that you gain without merit and you don't know where it came from. It's the gift dimension of life.
Yeah.
Amazing
Yeah.
grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Like something, uh, even though I was not a very nice person, uh, a grace came to me that changed me, that transformed me. That's what the song says. And that's what I mean by grace, that, you don't have to work for it or merit it.
Mhm.
Just every once in a while, you notice that, hey, look at this. I found something wonderful, or I had a wonderful realization that's so important. I made a decision that's really good for me and for others.
Yeah.
Um, that's grace.
It's I mean, I feel, when you say that you felt that it comes through you, that resonates with me, um, in my own writing. I've never felt like I was in charge. Um, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But that period of grace, I think the first time that I felt it, it's just such a freeing, it's, I don't know, it's like somehow, um, it's not all on your shoulders, I guess.
Mm,
That's kind of how I felt the first time that I really felt the power of grace through me.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it
and
shows you that you're not alone.
exactly. And I didn't feel alone. I felt surrounded by love, which is, what I hope everybody can feel. Um, can you
Even
tell me?
now, even now, between the two of us, there are many angels and bodhisattvas who are drawn to us because we're trying to help people in some way, and they're helping us. And I'm not airy fairy and new age. Saying it, I'm saying it in an archetypal way.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
can.
know it's not literally that way. I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not literal, but it's metaphorical.
Yes, that's beautiful. So just before we clue up, if you can you tell us about a time when a soulful ally made a significant difference in your own life?
Yes, there have been many. The people who led me to Buddhism,
Hmm.
the people who showed me a more mature way of being a Catholic rather than Catholic meaning superstition and magic.
Yeah.
People helped me have a mature view. The people like Father Dan Berrigan, who helped me find the peace movement and become a anti-war protester in my 20s and today.
Hmm.
It's the people who showed me there's a different way and that there's something in you that can have the courage to join into it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, I actually, and I'm thinking about your grandmother, and without really saying anything directly to you, she molded the way that you communicate with the
Oh,
world.
yes. Yes.
And how beautiful, what a beautiful legacy that she left you with. That's
Yes. In fact, I dedicated my first book to what I call the three graces of my childhood: my grandmother and her two sisters, Aunt Laura and Aunt Margaret, who are, of course, my great aunts. They're
yes,
my mother's aunts.
yeah,
And I cherish them more than anybody ever. And they were, I call them the three graces.
that's
And,
beautiful.
they never would know that about themselves. But I could tell they genuinely loved me. And I certainly love them and still do.
That's
So
beautiful.
that's how assisting forces sometimes live in your life. I have a whole section in the book about the people who have died and how they go on to become your assisting force, and how even to keep them in your life in a healthy way.
Hmm. Do you find connecting with nature kind of opens yourself up? Like I find there's so many lessons for life when you are outside. When you look around, like I could, like a tree. I love mowing the lawn for this reason because I stop. My husband laughs at me because I stop so many times to look at something or take a picture, or because I learn every time I step outside. And do you feel like that plays a big part in finding that special grace that you need for yourself? Sometimes does it allow you to connect to that higher power?
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. It is the higher power in so many ways.
Hmm.
And I do have a whole section in the book on how nature can be our assisting force. I'm thinking of when Ralph Waldo Emerson came here to California from Massachusetts to visit, and part of it was visiting with John Muir and seeing the redwoods. Later, he said, "I felt like the trees were looking at me affectionately."
Oh, that's so
That's
beautiful.
how you really appreciate nature.
Yeah.
You really feel them embracing you, holding you, the trees, the mountains, so forth. And the other
The
part of nature that strikes me so powerfully is that it renews itself.
Yeah.
There is no ultimate death, it keeps renewing. And that to me is the basis of hope.
That it truly is. Yeah, I remember in the depths of my own grief watching those tulips pop up in the spring. And I remember looking at them and thinking, okay, they came back and I will. I mean, it's life affirming really, because you're seeing God's creation and you're realizing that you're part of it too, so that you can do the same thing as that tulip. Yeah. Is there a final message or piece of wisdom you would like to leave our listeners with before we close out the interview?
Um, well, I just would like to say how much I've appreciated your sharing, and I can really tell that you've been through something and you've come through something, and now you're doing these podcasts to help others make that same journey. And I really admire you and appreciate that you had me on your show.
Well, well, thank you very much. I mean, coming from you, that means so much, because your work is so important, and I truly appreciate that. Um, so before we close, could you tell our listeners how they can connect with you and your message? So you have your website, correct? davidricho.com.
No, it's Dave Richo.
Dave. Okay, sorry
So
about
it's
that. Okay.
DAVERICHO.com. And there you will see my various books and talks. And a lot of what's on there is free. Most of it's free. And my books are sold on Amazon or directly from publishers Shambhala or Paulus, and they're also available through bookstores.
Perfect.
They're not self-published; they're published by publishing
It's-
houses.
right. So, I really encourage everyone to not only look at By Your Side, the book we've been talking about with regards to Soulful Allies, but also all of your other writings as well. So this has been an amazing episode, and I am so, so grateful to you. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
And until next time, our listeners, we will be back next time with another interview and sharing more stories of hope, gratitude, and resilience. So until then, keep looking for your little things to be grateful for. Thank you.